South Africa has 18,000 less police officers than it did in 2010. This is according to Police Minister Bheki Cele, who said the police services has not trained people for the last 2 years. That's all because of the COVID-19 pandemic. For more on the state of policing in the country, we're joined by Ziyanda Stuurman. She's an author and independent security analyst. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. So let's start with your assessment of the South African police services.
Right, so good evening, good afternoon to Duduzile and good afternoon to your viewers. I think that we're essentially at a point with the SAPS where there is an enormous amount of money and investment into the SAPS every year with an annual budget of anywhere sort of between 95 billion and about 100 billion rand a year. And the SAPS employs roughly 186,000 people and 160,000 of those people are police officers. So we have a very large police service, and certainly one that has a really large budget that has increased by 66% over the last decade. But that doesn't mean that we're actually getting the output that we should see from such a large investment in police. At this point, the ability or the police's ability to solve murders has declined about 38% over the past decade, and the sort of case solving rate across other categories of crime has also gone down. So we're really in a place where both capacity in terms of personnel as well as money aren't matching essentially the police mandate.
And that's just it. So the amount invested does not justify the output. Help us understand why.
I think a large part of that really has to do with the automatic promotions or the policy of automatic promotions within the police service. Other experts at, for example, the Institute of Security Studies have done analysis on how there are now a very large number of brigadiers and generals within the police service because of this automatic promotion policy. And that has meant that police officers are getting promoted to higher ranks and therefore not necessarily taking on the sort of beat cop or visible policing part of policing. And those promotions and automatic promotions after 4 to 5 years of service, depending on the rank, are not actually tied to performance in their jobs. So we really have, and we really do need a very intense bureaucratic intervention, particularly within the hiring and promotion practices in the police service.
Some analysts have also noted the squabbles or shenanigans, if you will, within the police services. So we take a look at Sithole, for instance. Is it clear to you what his future is?
I think that's very, very difficult to say. I think there have been a lot of political machinations within the appointment processes, particularly of national police commissioners, provincial police commissioners, and the heads of multiple sort of specialized units. And, that obviously extends to Jeremy Very, for example, in the Western Cape, as well as Andre Lincoln and others who are in specialized units, and who have also been, part and parcel of these very strange sort of appointment processes, hirings, firings, dismissals, suspensions, etc. And I think that all has an impact on both the way that the police internally function, as well as the relationship between, for example, the National Police Commissioner and the police minister. I don't know what will happen to Commissioner Sithole going forward, but I do think that it was incredibly necessary for a process of suspension to have been undertaken against him and to really find out precisely what happened with the so-called grabber incident.
When we want to find out what happened, let's take a look at the case of Charles Kinner and his assassination. The IPID finding that several police officers were at fault there. When we speak of the consequences, of this issue of output that does not match the amount of investment that is put into the services, what are we to understand about that situation?
Yeah, so I think the writing and commentary of an incredible investigative journalist named Karen Dolly, and in her latest book called To the Wolves, really exposes the deep and incredibly worrying connections between organized crime and the police service itself. And I think that's a massive hindrance, to any sort of work that good, clean police officers are trying to do. There's corruption at many levels of the police service. There's a lot of politicization and infighting within the police service. And once you have that, that takes away from people's ability to do their work and to do good police work. I think that the service is also still reeling from multiple years of state capture, as well as high-level interference in the way that the police work in order to cover the tracks of some of the officials and politicians who have been accused in the past, credibly accused in the past, of corruption and of other sort of misdeeds. So essentially, we're really in a place where the police service must clean house internally before it's actually able to do any of the work that we essentially pay them for, but also that they're mandated to do by the Constitution and the South African Police Service Act.
In cleaning house, do you perceive that there is a handle on organized crime in South Africa, and also the shortage of 18,000 police officers that has been put down to the COVID-19 pandemic and disruptions that it has caused? What is the impact on you and I?
Yeah, so I think it's very difficult to answer the question of, if there's a handle on organized crime, because we know so little about what's happening within the service itself. It's an incredibly large and, again, opaque, institutional organization. But I think just on the surface, it certainly doesn't feel like organized crime is under control, and it feels more like organized crime and, sort of organized groups have control at this point. I think that was really at the heart of very much of what happened during the July insurrection, and that really came to the fore. I think that again, the sort of question around, are there enough police officers on the streets, and the fact that we have 18,000 fewer police officers than we did in about 2010 can also, of course, be explained by the fact that in the last 2 years, there's, meant to be the recruitment of about 14,000 police officers that simply wasn't possible because of the COVID-19 pandemic. That number is quite a large cohort. And these large cohorts are meant to be trained in the multiple training academies that we have across the country. I don't think you can do that safely and with social distancing, in these training centers. So there's really been a dampener and a hampering of those recruitment processes of police officers over the last 2 years. But lastly, the point that I will make, though, is that it's not just about having warm bodies. It's not just about having 14,000 police officers to help replace those who resign, who retire, or, who may die or leave the service for other reasons. It's also about asking, where would those 14,000 police officers, theoretically, if we had them and we had trained them in the last 2 years, where would they be deployed? We know that policing is not the same in Sandton as it is in Alexandra. It's not the same in Khayelitsha as it is in Constantia. So those are also deep questions that we should be asking about the police that we train and recruit, and where those resources are actually being put.
On that point, and you also mentioned the July unrest, I wonder if you formulated an opinion on this. So we've been seeing a number of videos circulating on social media of South Africans allegedly kicking out foreign nationals and wanting to occupy spaces. We put it on record that we have tried quite extensively on the channel to get a hold of the police minister, just to at least get a sense of whether they are on top of those developments. But unfortunately, our efforts have drawn a nil. What do you make in terms of the police's capacity to deal with that issue?
So I think that this actually, you're completely right, that this ties in a certain way to the July insurrection. And I think that for multiple years, multiple people have spoken about the lack of capacity, particularly in crime intelligence, to be ahead of developments like this. A lot of xenophobic violence has been shown in the past to be coordinated, whether it's within communities or, possibly across political parties or other organizations that come together, to really sort of stir and to take action, against foreign nationals and their businesses. And I really do think that this is something that should be coordinated at a level or at a certain level within the crime intelligence ranks, as well as other security forces or security sort of cluster departments. And that is very possible, given that just the crime intelligence unit on its own within the police have about 4,000 staff members and a budget of about 8 billion rand annually. So this shouldn't be something that surprises us over and over and over again, specifically when we can see that organizing happening on social media as well as through other public means.
Ziyanda, it would be rather unfair of us not to commend the men and women in blue who do a remarkable job, and they are there.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I think that, a lot of the dysfunction within the SAPS is not necessarily due to individual police officers, more than there is systemic corruption, institutional failings, and those good police officers who wake up every day to do dangerous, difficult work are being failed by the institution just as much as you and I are as average citizens.
Ziyanda Stuurman is an author and independent security analyst. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon.